Right now, somewhere, a child is sitting in a classroom. A bell will ring, a worksheet will be collected, a test will decide something about their future. This feels normal to you. It feels like the way things have always been. But the real answer is far stranger. For almost all of human history, there was no school, no classrooms, no teachers standing at the front of a room, no grades. And yet, children still learned everything they needed to survive in some of the harshest environments on Earth. How did they do it? Your ancestors didn't sit still for lessons. They watched, they copied, they played, and somehow that was enough to produce master toolmakers, expert trackers, skilled healers, and entire generations who knew exactly how to stay alive. Start with the obvious question. What did learning even look like 50,000 years ago? Anthropologist Barry Hewlett spent years living among the AKA, a hunter-gatherer community in Central Africa. He wanted to understand how children acquired complex survival skills without formal instruction. What he found broke almost every assumption people have about how learning works. AKA children weren't sat down and taught. They were simply present. Present at the campfire while adults made arrows. Present in the forest while adults set traps. Present during the butchering of an animal, the weaving of a basket, the building of a shelter. Learning wasn't a separate activity. It was woven into the fabric of daily life. Think about that for a second. No lesson plan, no curriculum, just proximity, just exposure, just the quiet, constant presence of a child near an adult who is doing something real. This is called observational learning, and your brain is built for it. Deep in your neural architecture sit mirror neurons, cells that fire both when you perform an action and when you simply watch someone else perform it. Your brain doesn't just watch, it rehearses, it simulates. Watching someone start a fire is, in a very real neurological sense, a form of practicing how to start a fire yourself. Ancient children were drenched in this kind of learning from birth. They didn't need someone to explain the physics of a spear's trajectory. They watched 1,000 throws before they ever picked one up themselves. But watching was only the beginning. What came next mattered even more. Play. Researcher Shayna Lou Levy has spent years studying hunter-gatherer childhoods across multiple continents, from the Congo Basin to the Philippines. Her findings point to something remarkable. Across wildly different cultures separated by oceans and thousands of years of divergent history, children engaged in strikingly similar play. Mock hunts, pretend cooking, miniature shelters built from sticks and leaves, tiny bows shaped by tiny hands. This wasn't idle amusement, it was rehearsal. A child chasing a sibling with a toy spear was practicing the exact motor sequences their body would one day need for real survival. Play was the ancient world's flight simulator, low stakes, high repetition, and endlessly self-directed. Here's what's strange. Nobody assigned this play. Nobody graded it. Children chose it themselves, over and over, because it felt good to do. And that feeling, that internal pull toward practicing a skill just because it's satisfying, might be one of the most efficient learning systems ever discovered by evolution. Psychologist Peter Gray has argued that this self-directed, play-based model wasn't just common among hunter-gatherers. It may have been the dominant human learning strategy for the vast majority of our species' existence. Formal schooling, by comparison, is a blink, a few thousand years old at most, compared to roughly 200,000 years of Homo sapiens learning almost entirely through observation, imitation, and play. So why does that feel so foreign to you now? Because somewhere along the way, learning got separated from living. It got moved indoors, it got scheduled, it got tested. And in that separation, something was lost. Not the information, the hunger for it. Ancient children weren't forced to pay attention. They wanted to. Watching an elder carve a tool wasn't a chore. It was fascinating because the skill was visibly, immediately useful. You could see exactly why it mattered. There was no abstract promise of, "You'll need this someday." There was only, "You will need this tomorrow, when you're hungry." This points to something deeper about how your brain evaluates information. Relevance changes everything. A modern student memorizing a fact for a test 3 weeks away is using a completely different cognitive system than a child watching an adult identify which berries are poisonous. Knowledge that could save their life within the hour. Urgency sharpens attention. Consequence deepens memory. Ancient learning environments were saturated with both. And there was another ingredient modern classrooms rarely offer: mixed-age groups. In most hunter-gatherer societies, children didn't learn in same-age cohorts. They played and worked alongside siblings, cousins, and neighbors of many different ages, sometimes spanning a decade or more. Older children taught younger ones almost constantly, not because an adult told them to, but because it happened naturally in the flow of shared activity. A 10-year-old showing a 5-year-old how to weave a fishing net wasn't performing a lesson. It was just what you did when someone younger was watching and curious. This created a constant, informal teaching economy. Everyone was simultaneously a student and an instructor, depending on who was nearby and what skill was being practiced. Teaching itself became a skill, learned the same way everything else was, through imitation and repetition, not instruction. Now, here's where it gets genuinely strange. Some researchers have found that direct verbal teaching, the kind you experienced in school, was relatively rare in many traditional societies. Adults corrected mistakes. Adults answered questions when asked. But they rarely sat a child down and delivered an explanation nobody requested. Curiosity had to lead. Instruction followed it, rather than the other way around. Compare that to a modern classroom, where instruction leads and curiosity, if it shows up at all, follows behind, often struggling to catch up. This doesn't mean ancient learning was perfect, or that formal education has no value. Complex knowledge, abstract mathematics, written language, scientific method, these genuinely require structured instruction that observation and play alone can't easily provide. Nobody is going to independently rediscover calculus by watching an adult do household chores. But something about the ancient model still lives inside you, quietly, waiting to be noticed. Think about the last time you truly learned something well, not for a test, not because someone assigned it. Think about learning to cook a dish you loved, or picking up a hobby, or figuring out a new skill at a job by watching a coworker who was good at it. Chances are you weren't sitting at a desk. You were doing. You were watching someone else do it first, then trying it yourself, then adjusting, then trying again. That loop, watch, imitate, play, fail, adjust, repeat, is not a modern learning hack. It is the oldest learning system your species has. It's still running underneath everything even now, even in a world full of classrooms and screens and standardized tests. So the next time you feel your attention drift during a lecture, or notice how much faster you pick something up by simply doing it alongside someone who already knows how, remember what your ancestors knew without ever writing it down. Learning was never supposed to be separate from living. It was supposed to be woven into it, urgent, social, and endlessly repeated, until the skill simply became part of who you are. Right now, somewhere, a child is sitting in a classroom, waiting for a bell to tell them what to learn next. But underneath that desk, underneath that schedule, an older, quieter system is still running, the same one that once turned watching into surviving and play into mastery, without a single test ever being given.